This could significantly change how families pay for college, or even whether or not they're going to be able to afford college to begin with. So, what am I talking about? Well, back in 2017, or before then, President Trump, during his first presidential term, had enacted a series of tax cuts. It was called the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. It took place at the end of 2017, effective 2018. Well, those tax cuts, especially on the personal side, expire at the end of 2025. And there's been a lot of talk about Republicans trying to extend those tax cuts. But in Congress, if you extend or if you want to cut taxes or whatever, you have to find a way to offset that loss of revenue through other things. And so, as President Trump starts his second term, there's been a number of proposals that have been floated on various things related to higher ed. Now, some of the things we kind of knew that were going to happen. Now, they haven't happened yet, but we figured that they're probably going to happen. And one of the things that we knew, because it was covered extensively in the press, was about the SAVE plan, which is the income-based repayment plan for federal student loan borrowers. Even before President Trump took office, that plan was held up in the courts because I think it was like 7 or 8 different states had sued the federal government to put a halt to that plan. So everybody kind of knew that once President Trump took office, that plan was dead in the water. That hasn't officially happened yet, but the thinking is that's probably going to happen. What I'm going to talk about today are a couple of the lesser known or less talked about provisions that are tucked away in some of the proposals to help pay for these tax cuts that are going to have a significant, and I mean significant, impact on how families pay for college going forward. One proposal is to eliminate both the American Opportunity Tax Credit as well as the Lifetime Learning Credit. Now, both of these credits are tax reductions, right? Like you save money on your taxes as a way to help pay for college. So if you pay for college, generally you get a tax credit for that up to a certain dollar amount. Now, not everybody can take advantage of these because these were phased out based on income, but they were, they're a significant part of planning for college, especially for lower to middle income families. Because, for example, the American Opportunity Tax Credit was good for up to $2,500 per year. So that's $10,000 of college costs that you would have paid for that you've basically got back through this tax credit. So that's pretty important. But for all families, there's a proposal to make scholarships and other grant aid taxable. So right now, under the tax code, scholarships can be taxable if the scholarships are used for things other than tuition and mandatory fees. So, for example, if a scholarship paid for room and board, then it's taxable. That's true today. But imagine, if your son or daughter applies to college and get that $30,000 a year scholarship to lower tuition, that now is taxable income. Well, I suppose on one hand, I would rather pay the tax and get the scholarship than not get the scholarship so I avoid the tax. But that's a big deal because some of these scholarships that students get can be pretty big. And so that's a pretty significant change for families. And so, like I said, I'd rather get the scholarship and pay the tax, but still that's an expense that most families don't count on, having to pay taxes on the income of scholarships. Right? But that's a proposal that's tucked away. Another one is pretty significant, and that is phasing out the Parent Plus and the Graduate Plus loan. That's huge. Now, that's not a tax per se or anything else, so I don't really understand how it impacts the future budget. But I know that one of the common elements in the proposal is to sort of try to lower the cost of college to prevent people from getting into a lot of debt to begin with. I get that. But by doing away with the Parent Plus and the Grad Plus program, that program is a very significant way of how parents help their kids pay for college and how graduate students are able to pay for grad school, med school, law school, whatever. Yes, it's also the source of where you see a lot of the stories like, oh, I graduated college with like $400,000 of debt. A lot of that comes from the Grad Plus program. I get that. So, that's not a good thing. But imagine if you had to pay for medical school, which can be $100,000 a year times however many years times residency times whatever. It's hard to save up that money without being able to borrow. And so some people think, well, there are banks that lend, that make student loans. Just go there and borrow. And that's true, and you can do that today. But banks in general are for-profit entities. So they have much more strict credit underwriting criteria. So for a recent graduate student, who's on their way to medical school, they don't have any income. They don't really have a credit history to speak of. So they would not be able to borrow on their own from a private lender, which means that they would need their parents to co-sign. But parents, do you have enough income to support that kind of debt, like on top of the mortgage that you may have, or the rent, or the car payment, and your own credit card debt, or perhaps your own student loans, and you have the credit score high enough to make that happen? So eliminating that program, I would think, would mean that families would need to save a lot earlier for college, which generally is a good thing, but also save significantly more for college, especially if their kid's going to go on to law school or medical school. So, again, whether you're pro President Trump or not, that's not the point here. But I'm trying to highlight some of the lesser known provisions or the lesser publicized provisions that are going to have a significant impact on how and when you should start saving for college and how you're going to pay for college. Now, granted, these proposals are just that. They're proposals. Nothing has been enacted. So, but it's definitely on the minds of the politicians on the Republican side. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of these pass in some way, shape, or form. That's it for this week. I hope you found this information useful. As always, if you have other questions, please put them in the comments, and I may select one of your questions to answer in the future. Thanks so much, and as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.